If you are somebody who has struggled with feeling focused, today's episode is for you. And we have some really interesting ideas and thoughts and statistics and our own experience that we want to bring to this conversation, because I don't know about you, but sitting with so many entrepreneurs and coaching them and watching how multi-passionate they are about many things, and also the places where they struggle to get traction because they are focused in too many different places. I feel for people. And so when we brought up this idea of doing an episode about focus, we both it was interesting because we were like typing back and forth to each other, what should we talk about? And we literally both typed the same thing
at the
to
same
each
time.
other at the same time and crossed.
Yeah.
All right.
We had a moment of hyperfocus.
Yeah, we
during that.
Yep. All right. So that's what we're going to dive into today. Hey, you leader, entrepreneur, business owner, solopreneur, whatever you call yourself, we know you're a visionary business builder, wealth seeker looking to combine a passion for doing good with leading consciously. It's time to shift from a traditional focus of pure wealth accumulation to one that integrates well-being and fulfillment. You're here for a purpose, and it's time to shine your light. So here we go. Welcome back to the Conscious Edge podcast. I'm your host, Alicia St. Germain, here with my co-host, Jonathan Duggar. And we are so happy to have you here today. We always enjoy doing this together. It's so much fun to talk about the human experience of building a business and creating wealth and everything that we go through, our clients go through, and just being real with people about what that journey looks like. If you don't know me, I have a coaching business where I help women entrepreneurs get out of their own way so that they can get what they want in life. And Jonathan, what do you do in this world, in case people don't know you? Everything?
Yeah, depends on the day. I have my own coaching and consulting company as well, and I work with businesses and individuals to try and help them live more balanced and meaningful lives, and try and help their businesses be as effective and as efficient as they can be from a very, very balanced and mindful standpoint.
Yeah. And we have so much fun collaborating together, doing what we do in the world. So if you have not hit the follow or subscribe button, please make sure you do that now. All right. So let's get into it.
All right.
Focus.
Okay, I will. I'll try. Oh, that's what we're talking about.
That's what we're talking about.
Wait.
So we're really jazzed about this conversation.
Oh, there's a hummingbird outside.
Oh, there you go. Before we hit record, we were all over the place talking about focus and all the information that we were learning. And I said, you know what? I'm just going to hit record because I feel like this is going to be a really fun episode that I hope that you take away from this some tips and strategies, but also some, like, you're not alone. It's actually the whole concept of focus and entrepreneurship have a very strong correlation to each other. So
a lot of overlap.
I told Jonathan, and part of how we came up with this episode is I told Jonathan that lately, I oftentimes will say things like, oh, no, my brain just works differently. I have some qualities of ADHD. I'm not diagnosed. I've asked you several times as the psychologist, my friend, I'm like, okay, as my friend, as my psychologist, not my psychologist, but as a psychologist.
As your friend that is a psychologist.
Yeah, that. Do you think that it's possible that I might have ADHD? And you were like, yes. And then my next question was, is there any benefit to getting a diagnosis? Because I really didn't, unless it was really necessary, I really don't want to be medicated, but I would kind of like to know how to work well with my brain if I did. The other thing that comes up for me and why I tread so carefully on this is because it is a fad term right now in some respects. Like everybody uses it as like, oh, I forgot something, my ADHD. You have a statistic. I want you to tell people so that it helps to make sense, because I also see a marketing tactic. I don't want to say it's a tactic because that's judgment loaded, but when you're marketing, they're like, be your most authentic self, be you. And then some people come out and they're like, I have ADHD. I remember you were like the first person that you taught a mobile home class and you literally said to the class, I have ADHD, but you weren't doing it as like this is why you should like me or whatever. You're doing it like, this is why I'm going to get distracted.
Well, I put some parameters around what was helpful for me in a classroom, which subsequently becomes helpful for the students in the classroom. So my example was, I don't have a rewind button. So have something to take notes, because if I say something that you really like, write it down, because if you ask me to repeat it, there's a good chance I won't be able to.
No, and hindsight or behind the scenes note, after we stop recording, I go, oh, that was a really good episode. And every episode he goes, that's great, because I have no idea what I just said.
And I am being dead honest.
So, okay. So I see a lot of people kind of like come out as, I have ADHD, I'm a business owner. And I had a little, I had hesitation around that, because that's not really what I want to be known for. But I would like to know how to be more effective with how I operate, because it's become clear to me that I don't operate. I think everyone operates like I do, but they don't. And that's what I'm starting to learn. I also have a certain portion of clients who also operate like me, because like attracts like. And I'm constantly trying to tease out what is a big assumption, like this is how my brain, this is what my brain does to protect me because I've had experiences in the past. And what is, I don't have access to certain chemicals like dopamine and serotonin that regulate my brain to get me into action. Those are two different things, and they both exist. So sometimes I see the word ADHD just thrown out there haphazardly. And it's not really ADHD. It's self-protection. It's you just had too much on your plate. It was like not affecting your daily life. It affected one moment in your life. Mm-hmm. So that was a lot spiraling around. So let me land.
Let you focus.
Let me land on what is the statistic that you brought today about the prevalence of ADHD in the regular population versus entrepreneurs.
So there's been some good international research done over the past 4 or 5 years, because you'll hear people talk about, well, ADHD, ADD, neurodivergence, neurotypical. Those numbers probably look different in different cultures and in different areas. And there is some difference. There's an overdiagnosis and a misuse of diagnosis in this country compared to other countries, with especially ADHD and also with autism spectrum disorder. But some of the global research that's been done, it's basically one or 10 out of every 100. So 10% of a population has some sort of neurological challenges, cognitive challenge that would fall under dyslexia, ADD, ADHD, autism spectrum disorder. So you put all those together. So 10 out of 100. In samplings that have been done in either self-reported entrepreneurs, so people that identify themselves as an entrepreneur, or using some sort of standalone criteria that says, okay, this is what by this checklist, this person would be an entrepreneur, 40 out of 100. So 40% compared to 10%. And those numbers aren't exact, but that's hugely significant when you think about sort of a set of symptomology or a set of attributes or traits that the general population versus small business owners and entrepreneurs have.
So that's why I'm seeing it more prevalent. And so the reason that I said all of those things and then had you give that statistic was one of my reactions or judgments, right? We're very mindful of our judgments here, was like, is this really real? Or is this like a marketing tactic, a shtick, essentially, to relate to people? And maybe it's both.
I think it, and I do think it is both. So two things I want to bring up. So you talked about in my classroom how I would say, I would disclose that I had challenges with ADD and some language processing disorder. And one of the reasons I did that as well, because I learned very early on that there was a large percentage of my student base that also had the similar challenges. And they were going to sit in my class and struggle to try and be a good student because they had paid the money, they had a peer group they were, trying to stay in sync with. And I wanted to give them permission to do what they needed to do to get as much as they could out of that class. And I found that by saying that, and I even had students years later tell me, you were the first person that ever said to me, it's okay to do this and you can be successful if you are. It's okay to be like this and you can be successful if you are. So that still touches me today that actually had some impact because that was my intention behind it.
Yeah.
The other thing I do want to bring up is that we are now in a society that kind of creates ADD-like behavior in children and in adults. We live in a highly distracted, highly cluttered, highly chaotic environment from social media, from electronic stimulation, from a drive for constant stimulation, whether it's TV, laptop, tablet, phone, whatever it is, all those things. It creates a profile of behavior that looks like ADD. And I think, and some of the research is pointing to, that it actually over time will create it. It will change neurology. It will change biochemistry and will become, this society that has difficulty focusing on anything for any given amount of time.
So we're going to evolve into
devolve. The worst parts of.
That was the other thing that comes up for me around this that I think is so unique is we want to label everything. Mm-hmm. We want to have a diagnosis. In some ways, I liken it to, and please don't come at me, but it's just how my brain works. It's the way that we have treated having a baby as a disease, as opposed to a part of a natural part of life. And so I think as some of us have evolved and for whatever reason you have less receptors in your brain for chemicals, what's dopamine? What's it called? Neurochemicals. You have less receptors, how fast you clear things away and how your DNA works. Mm-hmm. We're all have some different wirings, which they would classify as like mutations. And it makes it sound like you're a mutant or you're like not right.
It's a disease of some sort.
I think that's what I'm trying to say. Is like, it's not there's a lot of gifts that come with your brain working differently, mm-hmm. being neurodivergent. And there's a lot of challenges. The way that we feel emotions. Some of us feel emotions. Like I feel joy more than average, but I also feel anger more than average too.
Despair and the other side of that coin. Yeah.
So it's like they all come with their curses and their gifts. I think just understanding a little bit of how to work with oneself is more the goal, as opposed to making it. And I have another friend who got diagnosed. And I said, what was the benefit of being diagnosed? And her response to me was like, it's not about having an excuse for not performing well. It's mm-hmm. about finding the tools that will work well for you.
Exactly. it's becoming more self-aware in a non-judgment way and learning to acknowledge the challenges, but also learning to revel in the gifts. Because the one thing I can say about this, frenzy of social media focus on neurodivergency, it has brought a lot of attention to some positive attributes. People talk about it. You'll hear it. My ADD is a superpower. Here's my superpower of hyperfocus, and here's how I use it. I didn't hear any of those things when I was in college, or when, they didn't even really have the diagnosis when I was a kid, but we got physical, report cards, and they had check boxes, behavioral check boxes. Mine always had fidgets in class, cannot sit still, talks too much, just those like things. But then I would get, the good grades. So it's sort of like, oh, well, those things are okay. But the highlights were always negative. Even now, if you did, from a research standpoint, if you did an audit of the literature, the research literature out there, you'd find 100,000 papers on the negative attributes of neurodivergency. And you'd find 1,000 maybe on, highlighting the positive aspects. So it is what you just said about figuring out for yourself what works for you and doing that. That's where all this needs to come to. It's like you can't even come up with a script for, okay, here, if you are diagnosed with ADHD, here's how you should study for an exam. Here's how you should finish a task. Because every person with that diagnosis, even if they have that diagnosis, every person is going to be different. So there may be some similarities that you can relate to and build from, but it's still a matter of getting to know yourself, getting to know your own rhythms. Like I've because this has been a lifelong challenge for me in different ways. Like I have patterns that I've recognized and that I try and work with where I know I'm going to be more effective and more efficient. Like during these times, like after 4 o'clock, before 10 o'clock at night are some of my most creative spans. If I have an idea that wakes me up in the middle of the night and keeps me awake, I need to attend to it then, because there's a reason that my brain woke me up and that I need, it's like those kind of things, which won't work for 95% of the population working like that. So, and it's not that I do that all the time, but I do that in those moments where I see it as useful or helpful. But it's taken me years to decide that. And it's taken a lot of work with mindfulness to remove the judgment from me being different and doing things different in order to be effective as I can be.
I think that's something I want to hit on, is because more than once I have worked with clients that say, like, I want to read. Like, I want to read books because the podcasts that I listen to, like, they're all readers, or they wake up at 4 a.m. or they, follow this, do this thing. But they can't make themselves, I'll just use the example of reading. They can't make themselves read. And I'm like, okay, so do you like to listen to audiobooks? Like, you could listen. Well, that's not reading. I was like, oh my gosh, can we not make up rules for ourselves of what transfer of information has to look like?
But they're looking for a way to be normal.
Yeah.
Because that's another practice that's unfortunate in our society, is this keeping everybody in a very rigorous box, a very rigid box. And learning especially has been that way. Oh, I just thought of something that was a tipping point for me. I was in a seminar when I was in graduate school, and it was taught by these Buddhist monks. And we had a section, and we were learning how to meditate, but we had this section on brains that were different. Like, we talked about neurodivergency, and it was sort of in the form of diagnosis, but it was also the person giving the lecture acknowledging that there were some people in the room, namely me, that did things differently and thought about things differently and saw things differently and felt things differently. And he said this, I'm going to try and quote it exactly, because it really was very profound. He said, when a flower doesn't grow and bloom, you don't change the flower. You change the environment that the flower is in. Mm-hmm. And it didn't land in that moment, but I kept working it through my brain, and it's like this huge weight lifted off of me, because it's like, okay, so how do I change my context? How do I change my peer group? How do I change my study environment? Instead of, I was working on changing me, I was trying to be normal. I was trying to do, read the page or listen to the lecture or whatever it was. And so I think everybody that has these types of challenges in their lives, that's what it is. It's about changing the environment, changing the process, changing the system in a way that is most effective for you, and being aware of that in a non-judgment loaded way.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, and yeah, so it's interesting. And as I'm learning about, there's a couple of people that I've started to connect with. I want to get them on the podcast. So, to be continued. But I also was mentioning to you about, like, sometimes I notice that I will hyper focus on something, mm-hmm. and I go way down the rabbit hole on it, and I get obsessed about it. I don't even realize that I'm really doing it. I'm just like, it looks to me, and I recently did this, like, with my financial stuff. I was like, I'm going to break through this. I want to learn this. So a lot of times it looks like growth for me, like personal growth, because I'm trying to, like, unpack something or figure something out and tease something apart from, my big assumptions that I make about the world and fears and old habits that I have. And then, something else I'll feel like, okay, great. I got a handle on that. And it's like, it's not interesting anymore. Mm. It's not that I don't want to do it. Like, it's just, now it's part of what I do. I've got systems and processes set up in place to handle the finances, to make really good decisions. I no longer have a story that I'm not good with numbers. And now I'm, like, tackling some other executive function challenges that I have. So I'm like, well, let's go down this path here and start talking about this. So I think it works for me in some ways, but you have an experience of me that's a little bit different.
I'm not going to remove the power. I don't want to remove the power behind, hyper focusing to sometimes an almost obsessive level to get to an end, because you're very effective at that. You do a great job of that. And I think that is one of the ways that you've developed, you've figured out your own set of rules of, I've got to remove my distractions. I've got to put these parameters up. It's almost like a horse being trained when they put the blinders on, so they mm-hmm. stay focused on this specific path. And it's effective for you. Mm-hmm. What I think one of the things that, first of all, is a very positive thing that you've got much better at, is recognizing, this is what I need to do, so I'm going to do it. As opposed to in the past, I think this is what I have to do these things, but I also have to do all these other things because that's what other people do, or that's what good moms do, or that's what good investors do. So I see a lot of growth in you, where you're like, this is what's effective, so I've got to give a little over here and take a little over here to make this work.
And not even I've got to, I choose to.
You choose to, yes. Much better words. Yeah. One of the things that we were laughing about, though, earlier is that one of the pieces that I don't think she had recognized until we talked about it, like, even in her language to me, and I think because we're very comfortable in talking about pretty much anything, but she will say to me, like, okay, so I've removed Messenger from my phone, so you can't contact me that way. In fact, the next 3 days, I don't need to talk to anybody because I'm going to do this. And then, like, she lays out the ground rules for it, and I'm just sitting there in the back going, okay. There's like, but in my head, I'm like, she's going to get this done. This is going to work for her because, this is the system she's created. We all, though, it's, again, what we're talking about in the last episode, learn by doing. This is hugely important for anyone with any sort of neurodivergent challenges, is practicing, see what's effective, tweak it, refine it, and then apply it to the real world. Because there's a lot, if I were left to my own devices to how I would live, I mean, I would look like a crazy vampire person or something, because I mean, we have to live in a normalized society. It's kind of like, for me, this is the example I use all the time. I am
severely left-handed, left-sided. Everything is left-sided. A lot of left-handed people have some ambidextry. I do not. Like I am right side delayed. If you look at neuropsych tests where you have to do agility tests and stuff, I'm right side delayed. So I'm super left-handed, always have been. But I grew up in a school system where there were no left-handed desks. There were no left-handed notebooks. There were no left-handed scissors. So I was forced to adapt in some ways to be able to even exist in that system. Well, there's some reality to that neurodivergency. We have to adapt certain things. But when it comes to our own working mode and our own work environment, our own processes for productivity, we can be more effective when we're allowed to create those ourselves and to test those realities, to retest, to refine without a lot of our own self-judgment, because that's where it usually comes in, or somebody else. Hence why a lot of entrepreneurs started in a corporate setting, did poorly in the corporate setting, and went out on their own. They were trying to create their own rules. They were trying to create their own environment, trying to figure out how to thrive where instead of under a set of conditions where they didn't.
So you had a different experience in like your formative years than I did, because you said that, what was your experience? What was the feedback that you got?
Well, I had, I would call it much more negative from a standpoint of you can always do. It was never, you're doing great at this. It was always you could do better, or because I was a A and B, mostly A student, and I did, I obviously zoned out a lot, or I would be reading. I was an avid reader. That was one thing where a place I could always hyperfocus. I'd be reading in the middle of class, with my book in my lap or something like that, because my legs would stay still if I were reading. So I get in trouble because my legs are making noise. So I read. So I was trying to, do some self-soothing there. But I would have teachers, and even into my college years, where they would say, if you're not tapping into your potential, you're only working at 20%. And if you're doing this at 20%, think what you could do at, 80%. And that was hurtful to me. I processed that as I'm not good enough. I'll never be good enough. I'll never be like the guy over there doing 80%, whatever. And even though the reality was the outcome, the product, yes, I could have done better. There were lots of things I could have done better, and some things I did do better in as I've developed my own path and my own systems. But
I want to compare.
Okay.
Let me compare with you
in
this.
Please.
Okay. So my experience was I also was like A-, A-, B+ student. And I did not get in trouble ever. Great student, very good. Also, did not study till the night before and crammed overnight. Always procrastinated the project. And then when I would have to do it last minute, it would turn out really great, but not as good as I wanted it or knew what I was capable of, because I always ran out of time to make it good, because it took me being under pressure to get clarity and motivation to make decisions, because I was trying to get it right. And so that I always ran out of time, and I was like, oh, it could have been better. So I didn't have anybody saying anything negative. It was like, you're so smart.
So you just stay below the radar.
So I stayed always below the radar, and I knew it. I knew there's this running joke of I will always go 90%, but I never crush it. And it bugs the crap out of me because I know I could crush it, but I can't get it together enough to crush it. Right? So I always feel like I'm at 90%. And then I always tell my people who operate like me is nobody else knows it, because your good is most people's great.
Yeah. Yep. I have had variations of those words said about like something specific, like a paper I wrote or something like that. And with self-knowledge, though, self-judgment of how much better this could have been if I hadn't started the night before, or if I had worked on this when I finally first knew about it, things like that.
So no one said anything to me. And so I just thought, I guess this is just as good as I am. Mm-hmm. So I got that fixed mindset, and that happens. I've heard that before with people who are told that they're smart. You're so smart. You're so smart. I'd heard you're so smart all the time. And so it's like, well, I guess this is the finite amount of smartness that I have.
I'm at my capacity.
I'm at my capacity. And it wasn't until much later, like now in life, where I'm like, okay, I'm going to learn math. Like I'm not going to be bad at math anymore. So I'm going to figure that out. And so I've kind of started to figure that out. But it's interesting that you had such a different experience, and yet we have this, we still come to the same place of not being good enough.
Mm-hmm. I think that those whole, the worthiness challenges come from a lot of, they're mostly self-imposed. Yeah. And regardless of the exposure you have, even if you had somebody that was very nurturing and caring and for early on, those internal dialogues, until we work on those, because they don't always come out of trauma. They sometimes are those voices because we're comparing ourselves to others all the time. And when we see ourselves as different and feel ourselves as different, because it is a very emotion-based thing, that's where that starts coming in and creeping in at a very early age. Mm-hmm. Like I would look around the room and see other kids listening and sitting still and enthralled with a particular subject or something. And I'm like, I don't even know what she just said. Why are my legs bouncing? I can't wait to get out of here. I'm so hungry. I got to pee. It was like all those things, but I could feel the other kids and feel my difference. And what's wrong with me? That's the message. What's wrong with me? Why can't I? Mm-hmm. So that manifests in a lot of different ways. I think we need a part 2 of this, because I think we really need to talk about some how we can all benefit from this shared knowledge and be the best we can be, do the best we can do, feel the best we can feel.
I agree. So if you relate to this episode, we want to hear from you. I want to know what your challenges are. What have you found that works for you? If you are like a DM person, just DM me on Instagram at Alicia St. G. If you are an email person, you can email me at hello@consciousedge.com. Like I want to know more from you. I want to know what your journey is, what has worked, what are you struggling with, and here we go. Hyperfocus.
You can put this in a review too. Put your thoughts about the episode, but also if you want to share some personal information or ask for additional information, put that in your review.
Yeah. So, because there's definitely some people that I'm reaching out to that I think have some really cool, relatable information for business owners. Here's one of the things that I am on a quest for. So early on in my career, I realized that being a mother was super important to me as a business owner. And I found it really challenging to find a coach or any kind of information that really talked about balancing motherhood and building a successful business from scratch, where you didn't put your children in childcare. And so, because that was not what I wanted for myself. So I didn't find that. So then I started getting really frustrated, and I found it hard to relate to people who didn't have kids. I love the strategies. I love the things they come up with, but I still don't have the strategy to do it while being a mom. So a lot of the people I follow tend not to be moms. So I am looking for, and then I found there are some mothers who talk about how to run your home as a mom with ADHD, but they don't talk about how to run a business as a mom with a home who has ADHD. So, like, if you know of this person out there that exists, please make an introduction because I want to meet them very badly.
That would be
That would be an awesome guest on the podcast.
Yes. All right. So with all of that being said, we're going to do a part 2 for sure. Sending you so much love.
Be well, everybody.
Thanks for listening to the Conscious Edge podcast. Make sure you subscribe and take a moment to be kind and share this episode with someone you care about. Leave a review to help us bring more compassionate leaders building businesses and creating wealth to the table. And for show notes, head over to consciousedge.com/podcast. This podcast and the linked materials are presented solely for general information, educational, and entertainment purposes and should not be taken as personal or medical advice or any kind of mental health treatment. Please consult a medical or mental health professional if you feel you need such services. Please be advised that all investing and entrepreneurial endeavors involve risk, and the use of the education and information on this podcast and linked materials is at the user's own risk.
This podcast is part of the Sound Advice FM network. Sound Advice FM, women's voices amplified.